couple of months back, I reviewed the Mazda CX-50 Turbo Premium Plus, and I said that that is the best small SUV crossover that I have ever reviewed. And specifically when it comes to the equipment level that you get for the price point and also how it drives. It was just a fantastic vehicle. And this week, Mazda has loaned me this, the 2025 Mazda CX-50, the hybrid version with a completely different drivetrain. So my question is this still just as good to drive as the Turbo? We're gonna find out later in the video. But first of all, we're gonna have a look at this design from a front, side, rear, the interior, before you take it for a drive. And when it comes to Mazda's lineup in 2025, I think that Mazda right now is probably the #1 brand that has the best cars across their entire lineup. I don't think there is one bad Mazda that I reviewed for sale right now. They're just crushing it when it comes to the equipment level and also the design and how their cars drive. So let's jump into this review and check out the 2025 Mazda CX-50 Hybrid. As always, before we jump in and talk about this design, let's check out what's under the hood, because as I said, it is completely different from what we have in the base 2.5 liter 187 horsepower and the Turbo with 256 horsepower. This one, the hybrid, comes in somewhere in between there. So we have a 2.5 liter as still hybrid though, 4-cylinder, 3 e-motors. You have 219 horsepower, 202 pound-feet of torque. It's connected to an eCVT gearbox, and you have E all-wheel drive as well. 0 to 60 in about 7 seconds. Top speed comes in at 120 miles per hour. Fuel economy, though, fantastic. Absolutely beautiful numbers there, because we do have 39 city, 37 highway. And the price, again, Mazda and their value, the price for this one is $41,470, and that includes destination. And this one is finished in ingot blue metallic with the black and brown interior. And another cool thing I like here, that it shows that Mazda is not really skimping on the details and saving money and stuff like that. They actually put regular struts in here, so we don't have a prop rod for the hood. And that is just details that makes Mazda feel more quality than what you might think it actually is. So let's close this back down. Probably shut off the engine as well, because it is pretty loud. I was thinking there was going to be an EV mode. For some reason, it just fired up the engine. But let's keep it on for now. So looking at the design here, what I love about Mazda CX-50 compared to the CX-30, for example, is that this has a much more stately design to it. It has a much more upright front end. You can see just how vertical this is right here, looking very clean and very stately and upscale, while the CX-30 being the smaller sibling, of course, you're going to have a little bit more styling in that. So we have more of a sloping front end, but I definitely prefer this one right here. You can see just how the hood shoots out straight from the A-pillar and then straight down in the front end. And this is a very cool feature here as well, graphic feature with this black piece. You can see how the headlights, full LED adaptive headlights as well, they turn with the steering wheel. You can see how deep inside underneath here is, they sit tucked in underneath this piece, which I think looks very cool. And then you have this shelf up top with some texture on it up top. The grille is completely open. We don't have a 360 camera in this car, so we don't have a front mounted camera in this specific CX-50, but everything here is completely open. It's also open all the way down here in the bottom. We do have a little bit of a different styling for the hybrid. The bumper looks different here, and they also raised the entire vehicle up by 2 inches in order to fit the battery technology that we have in here. But you can't really tell, comparing this to a regular CX-50, you can't really tell if this is the hybrid. Even as I said, it sits 2 inches higher, but they sort of hid that very well. So coming around to the side view and the proportions of this CX-50, this is where it really shines, in my opinion. I think it's a beautiful, stately looking machine. Even though it's a smaller size SUV, it still has a very elegant look to it. And one detail that I've always loved on the CX-50 are these fenders. You can see how this line right here goes into the front end, of course, and then wraps and comes in to and creates the entire greenhouse. So the greenhouse line here from the A-pillar creates this muscle over the front end fender. I think that is beautiful. In this case, we do have the premium wheels, 19-inch wheels. If you go with the turbo version, you can get up to 20-inch wheels. I think 19s looks pretty good here. 225 millimeters wide tires all around, and the wheel design looks decent. Not the best looking wheels, but they're still sort of fit this type of vehicle in my opinion. You have the indicator lights integrated right here, and finally the engine shuts off and quiets down a little bit, and you also have the gloss black housing for it, of course. And I do love this pulsating light that we have all around the Mazdas when it comes to the indicators. Of course, also down here in the front end you can see it maybe not so clearly in the sunshine, but it sort of pulsates, and it has a very nice calming feature to it. One graphic detail that I never understood on the CX-50, if you look at the greenhouse trim, you have a black going all around the greenhouse here, and then you have this small little chrome piece in the back. I don't understand why Mazda decided to put just this piece in chrome when everything else on the car itself is either blacked out or in body color. You can see the big black cladding at the lower section as well. And this hybrid badge, I'm not so sure about this though. This, I would just remove this because honestly, I think this badge just makes it look a little cheap. It looks like an aftermarket badge that someone just slapped on the side there. Up top, we do have the full panoramic sunroof that you can open up completely if you want to do that. Pretty nice to see. You also have the roof rails up top. Now, the 3/4 rear view is by far my favorite view for this car, and that is a simple reason for that. In the front end, these air curtains here down low are functional. So we have air curtains in the front, but in the back they're covered up. But I don't think that matters because what they do visually is if we come back here, you can see just how wide this vehicle looks. It looks so planted. I love that with the CX-50, and that has to do with this muscle that we have going over the rear axle. You can see we have the same sort of muscle in the front axle, and then coming back even more pronounced in the back here with this shelf up top. And what this does is creates a beefy, bulky side profile here for the rear axle, and then right underneath it you have the rear wheels. Almost BMW-like from the mid-2000s for the X3s and the X5s. Now looking at the graphics back here, we have a bunch of badges. I want to have these badges, the CX-50 all-wheel drive and the hybrid. I would probably again just remove it, but I want to have them be in black. I love to see that we have dual exhaust pipes back here. And makes for a symmetrical rear end, and that is what I want to see in pretty much every single car. And again, these pulsating taillights looking very beautiful. I also like the design of the taillights themselves with the daytime run lights here. Looks very clean. You have the reverse light, everything being LED, and I also like the shelf up here for the taillight itself. Now the wiper is, as you can see, it is visible, which is, I guess, totally fine for this type of price range. And we have the reverse camera located right down here. Now if we open the trunk up, it is power assisted. Always nice to see, and it's not really a lot higher than the regular 2.5 liter base or the 2.5 liter turbo, even though we do have this battery pack underneath and 3 electric motors in here. So you have plenty of space back here. You have some storage on the sides on this side, and then you have this storage here. And if you want to have more space, all you got to do is just push or pull this lever, and you can see that it folds down the rear seats. Very, very easy to do. You have the same thing here on the sides, a couple of LEDs here, and a cigarette outlet on the left side, and that's pretty much it for the rear space. You also have a spare tire underneath right there. So with that said, let's close this back down. And let me know what you think about the overall the CX-50 design. Are you a fan of this design, or do you think they could have done something better? Personally, as I said, for me, this is by far I think it is, honestly, the best crossover or SUV in this size for sale. Best looking crossover SUV in this size right now. I just love what Mazda is doing with their Coda design language. And now in the sunshine, you can clearly see all the beautiful muscles that we have going on the side. With that said, we talked about the exterior design. Let's jump in here and check out this interior, which some might say feel a little dated, but to me that is just it's just a positive thing, honestly, because we do have the analog cluster with the housing for it. We also don't have too big of an infotainment screen right there. It's 10.25 inches. And in this case, we do have the 12 speaker Bose sound system integrated in the door. I like the contrast stitching that we have going on here. Proper door handle. The one touch up and down for all windows is also nice to see. I don't understand why companies usually just have it in the front. Why not have it on all four? You have lock and lock the door here. Proper door handle, a couple of storage compartments down here with a cup holder, and you have 2 memory seat settings as well right there. 10-way adjustable seats, looking beautiful. They're not too sporty, but they're just the right type of seats that I want to see in this car. Not too bolstered, just nice and elegant looking wheels. So let's jump in here and check out the rest of this interior for this 2025 CX-50 Hybrid. So starting with the gauge cluster here, you have a 7-inch screen right there in the middle. And the thing about this, it's not really configurable. You can just configure a couple of things in the center portion with this info button right there, and it doesn't really show a lot of information. I like to keep it right here. Just you have 3 different versions of the screen, so I like to keep it in just the speedometer like that. You have the charge right there and how much power you're using if you're charging the battery, and right now you can also check out the charge of the battery. We do have pretty much a full battery. You can see it right there in the middle. And on the right side, you do have the fuel gauge and also the temp gauge. So very, very simple layout for the gauge cluster. And I love to see that for a 2025 model year. I just think it's beautiful. And it's definitely what I prefer to see instead of just having 2 dual 12.3-inch screens here. Now up top, we do have the 10.25 inch infotainment screen. You can't really see what's going on in here now, but you do have wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto as well, and you don't have a touchscreen here when you're in the native system. But if you connect your phone CarPlay and you're standing still, then all of a sudden this screen becomes a touchscreen, which is very interesting to see. But it's this very simple layout for the Mazda software, so it's very easy to figure out how to use it with this dial here. You just use the dial and you don't really have a lot of options anyway, so it becomes super easy to figure this out. And you can switch all the settings in here. As you can see, you also have Alexa built in here. You have in-vehicle displays, active driving center display. You can change out these settings. You have safety settings, vehicle settings. Let's go in and check this out. Exterior lighting, interior lighting, rain sensing wipers, and all of this stuff that probably you're just gonna set up one time anyway and then just keep it at those settings. So you don't really necessarily need to use this a lot, and I do believe most people anyway are gonna have their phone connected at all times. I do like the design here though, with the vents on the sides coming out from the gauge cluster like this, looking very nice. Again, there's contrast stitching coming back here, and the center lonely vent right there. It doesn't have any sort of friends next to it at all. It's just a one single vent in sort of, it's not in front of the passenger, it's not in front of the driver, it's just in the middle of everything that goes on here. Very interesting position for this vent. Same type of vent there that like I have on the driver's side. Again, contrast stitching with this very soft, beautiful leather right here. I think this also makes it feel very high quality, and that you have soft touch material all across up top here. And this being the Premium Plus, you also have a head-up display that I personally do not care for at all. Now looking down here, this is what I love to see again. I mean, just check out this interior and how simple everything is. It's nothing complicated in here, and I don't feel like I'm missing anything. You can tell, compare this to modern interiors and just how much stuff we have going on. But this is all I personally need, and that is why I love Mazda. We have these beautiful dials for the temperature, of course, circulating air. If you want to have that on, you can do that right here. You have fan speed on, up and down, and heated and ventilated seats, which is part of the Premium Plus package. It's actually a little bit hot in here, so we can turn the ventilated seats on there. All the way down here, you do have an outlet, cigarette outlet, hiding right under there, and some storage here. This is not the wireless charger. It's further back. And then we have 2 cup holders. This is what the key looks like. It doesn't have remote start on the key, but if you have the app, you can actually start your CX-50 from the phone app if you're the owner of the car. You have lock, unlock, hold to open the trunk, and the panic button right there with a beautiful little Mazda logo there. I wish it said like CX-50 here or something like that to make it feel a little more special. The gearbox. The gear selector, putting it into reverse. As I said, we don't have the 360 camera, but we do have the regular rear view camera, of course, this being mandatory today. That's all the cameras you have for the camera settings, and you can also go into sport mode and shift it up and down. Again, I still don't understand how that works with a CVT gearbox. Thankfully, we don't have the paddles here, because that would not make sense to me. It doesn't make sense in pretty much any CVT car to have paddles. But if you want to change gears, whatever gears, imaginary magic gears you have, you can do that here by just putting it into drive, popping it into the left side like that. Drive mode selector here, you do have power, normal, and trail. So we can have it on trail now, because check this out. We are actually on sort of an icy trail out here. So let's keep it in trail for now. Put it back into park. Parking brake, auto hold at red lights, and you have this navigation system here for the infotainment screen. EV mode, if you want to go into EV mode, you can do that. But just pressing that button, volume knob, and the phone charger is hiding under here. I like this position because this means that when you're charging your phone, when you're driving the car, you can't actually see the phone itself, which is great. You don't get the distraction by all the notifications that pops up all the time. You don't know what's going on. You're on the highway. You don't want to see who's messaging you. You can't do that when you're in the Mazda CX-50. Now, open this up. We do have the split opening here. 2 USB-Cs down there. Perfect. No LED though. Would be nice to see an LED in here. Storage is rather big for this size of vehicle overall, and very, very soft on top of this. Very nice to feel this. Now, looking at seats, we talked about the seats briefly. Not too big side support here, which is totally fine. They're 10-way adjustable, heated, ventilated on both the passenger and the driver. And I do think the seats themselves look very, very nice with the contrast stitching again coming back in the door panel and across the dash here. Now, opening up this piece of engineering up top, the big sunroof. As I said, panoramic sunroof going all the way back to the headrest of the passengers. And if you want to, you can also open up this forward section right here. Last but not least, we do have a big glove box for the CX-50. With that said, let's jump back. Let's fold up the rear seat. And let's see if I can fit behind my own driving position, being 6'1", 6'2", in the back seat. And again, look at this beautiful muscle here. I just love this line of the CX-50. It makes such a big difference and creates such a unique design for this. And look how the door opens. It's almost 90-degree opening straight in there. So it's very easy to get in and out of this. No problems at all. So let's fold this back up and let's move this thing. Don't have a lot of snow today, thankfully. Looking at the door panel, very similar to what we have in the front end. Would probably want to see the contrast stitching come back here in some way, but we don't get that here. We do have a couple of cup holders down here, and of course speaker integrated right there. Now jumping in here, no problems at all. Even though this is a hybrid and we sit 2 inches higher than the normal CX-50, both the base and the turbo, I have no problems at all fitting in here. You can see the headroom is fantastic as well. All the way down here, we do have a couple of vents and a couple of USB-Cs, and that's pretty much all you need. All you got to do is just charge your phone here, and you can be entertained for a cross-country road trip as long as you have USB charging ports in the back, which we obviously do. And if we fold down the center armrest, check this out. We got 2 cup holders here. Well done, Mazda. Now, to the question that I wanted to answer in the beginning of this video. Is this as good of a driver's car as the CX-50 Turbo Premium Plus with the hybrid setup that we have here? There's a lot of differences here compared to both the base model, the 2.5 liter without the turbo with 187 horsepower, which is not the one that I would go for. If I would go with non-hybrid, I would definitely go for the turbo. But there is also a lot of changes to the turbo, because now we don't have the 6-speed automatic, which in my opinion was a big part of why the turbo was such a fun car to drive, specifically with the paddles. I told you when I reviewed it that it felt like, even though you're sitting in a small SUV or crossover, I don't know if this is, I don't know the names for cars these days. Is this a crossover? Is it an SUV? I don't know. It's definitely not a sports car, that's for sure. But when I was driving the CX-50 Turbo, it really felt like a sports car to me, with the six-speed automatic transmission. And here, now that we have the CVT, it definitely feels like any other CVT. It just feels like it's revving all the time and just over revving and using a lot of gas. But as we know, with the hybrid setup, that's definitely not the case. I mean, you get 39 MPG city, and I do believe 34 highway, about a range of maybe 500 miles or so on a full tank, which is not bad at all. But still, it's a different chassis as well, and they also had to raise it up by 2 inches. But if I don't think about the transmission and how this thing handles, I've driven it for a few days now. Mazda still just has this capability of making it doesn't matter what type of package the car is, if it's an SUV or whatever. you still get this sporty feel from the chassis when you're driving the car, and that goes for this as well. Even if it is a CVT with the hybrid setup here, it's still a very, very fun car to drive. I mean, even though you can't, of course, you can't shift it manually anymore, because we don't have the 6-speed automatic in this one. But when it comes to the power, around 220 horsepower, something like that, 202 pound-feet of torque. Compare that to the turbo, which has a 256 horsepower. You can definitely feel the difference there. The turbo definitely feels like the livelier car of this, but the fuel economy is not going to be anywhere close to as good as you get with this one right here. Here a lot of rattles is because we're going over this washboard surface here, so it's not the most smooth ride for sure. I mean, it's a smooth ride for what it is, what the road surface is, but it creates a lot of noise in here. But what I think Mazda is doing absolutely fantastically these days when it comes to their entire lineup. I mean, I've tested the Miata, which I just want to buy a Miata because it's such a great vehicle. I've tested the CX-70, the CX-90, the CX-30, and now both the CX-50 versions of the hybrid and the turbo as well. And I think every single, and the Mazda 3, of course, I can't forget about Mazda 3, the turbo, which I don't understand why Mazda is not offering the turbo hatchback 3 with the manual transmission. If they did that, it would be a killer hot hatchback. And it also comes with all-wheel drive, which is it's definitely something that I want to have. That is why I would buy a Golf, for example. I would go with the R because I want to have the all-wheel drive instead of the front-wheel drive that you get in the GTI. But back to the point, Mazda is just crushing it right now in design and also in features and price point for what you get for what you're paying. I think you're getting such a good deal for pretty much every single Mazda that is on sale today. Now, when we talked about the interior, I said that some people might probably think that this interior looks dated because it has analog, sort of majority analog cluster to it. But in my opinion, I think that feels way, way more classy. It also feels way more expensive than having just pixels everywhere. Well, that's just my opinion. I don't know. I love this layout that we have in here with the simplistic design for the climate settings here. Just a small little, control panel down here. That is all you need. You don't need a bunch of buttons all over this interior. And I kind of like that you don't even have a touchscreen up there because, first of all, it's very hard to reach up there. It sits very far away. And it's something different. Everything is touchscreen these days, and instead we have this rotary dial here, which works totally fine. It's gonna take you about 2 minutes to figure out how this works. And if you still want touchscreen, you can always connect your phone and just come to a stop and you have touchscreen for your CarPlay and Android Auto. I think the design is also, even though it might be a negative for some people that it's too old, too outdated, to me it just feels very, very refreshing and classic. It's a classic interior for pretty much every single Mazda, and I hope they don't do what Audi did, which used to have some of the best interiors just 2-3 years ago. I mean, Audi's interiors were top notch a couple of years ago, but now they're also moving into this dual screen setup, which is sad to see. I mean, it just it feels like the interiors these days just lack personality, and there's just a bunch of screens and pixels that we get and nothing that we can feel with our fingers and just touch and check the different textures and materials. That is what I want in an interior. So the ride quality here going over this dirt road is very good. I do think maybe it helps to have the 19s instead of the 20s that we get on the turbo version. But I'm in the trail setting here now. I'm not entirely sure what that does. Probably has something to do with the traction control, and I don't think it raises and lowers the car at all. It's just the same 8.1 inches of ground clearance. That is, by the way, the same ground clearance that you have in the turbo as well, even though this technically is 2 inches higher, but the ground clearance is still the same. Oh yeah, some rally going on here. I think the sunroof is rattling a little bit on these roads, which is totally understandable. But yeah, it's still a very, very fun car to drive. I don't like the. I never been a fan of head-up displays though. If I could figure out how to turn it off, I probably would. It's probably very easy to do. I just haven't figured it out yet. But I never really cared for head-up displays. It's right there in front of me. I just wanted to be removed. I have all the information I need down here. So which CX-50 would I personally buy? To me, it's pretty obvious. I mean, I would 100% go with the CX-50 Turbo Premium Plus with the 20-inch wheels. It looks great with the 20s on there, and it's not a vehicle that I would personally ever take on a proper off-road adventure. So 20s would I would rather have it look good than maybe go with 18s or something like that and have a little bit more rubber, because it doesn't really matter to what I would use the CX-50 for. But that is 100% the CX-50 that I would personally buy. But if you want to have better fuel economy, I mean great fuel economy, and you don't mind having a CVT instead of the 6-speed automatic, and it's still a very, very fun car to drive, even though it sounds like it's working overtime all the time, then the CX-50 Hybrid that we're driving today might actually be the car for you. But I would say go and test drive both, because you're definitely going to feel the added power that you have in the turbo compared to this. This feels a little sluggish, specifically coming onto highways and merging onto highways and overtaking. It takes a lot of time, and I didn't have that feeling at all when I was driving the turbo. So for those reasons, I would personally go with the turbo myself. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.